Your club, Rotary Club, is, as you all know, I'm sure, is the first service club in Newfoundland and Labrador, and you've been around since 1921, which is a very long time to provide services and benefits to the people of Newfoundland and Labrador, people of St. John's. And I also know that Rotary programs have a positive impact on people around the world. And I want to just to acknowledge the continuation of the work that you've done. I know you've got some members who've been long-standing members in your club, and that's many years of dedication to the people of the province. And I want to acknowledge that and congratulate you for that. It's kind of in conflict in the short period of time that I've been Premier. You've had a club for about 94 years, 95 years, and I've been Premier about 5 months. So it's a little bit different. It's a little bit different in experience, but I do want to acknowledge it, and I want to thank you for allowing me to be here with you today. One of my favorite parts of the job that I have, and we all know that it's a busy schedule and it's a hectic schedule, but it gives me the opportunity to travel around Newfoundland and Labrador and to meet great people in our province. And I use this opportunity today to just to stress the importance of me being here for you, and for me, it's important for me to be here to join you today, because I believe in receiving input and direction from the people of the province. And I want your input. I'm going to talk about it a little bit more later in my comments today, but as I travel around the province, the fantastic opportunity to meet the people of Newfoundland and Labrador, and quite often people are usually quite willing to come up and offer a viewpoint, quite often get support, acknowledgement of support and work and effort that we do, but also to give it input and your feedback on the work that we're doing. Just yesterday, I was in Gander for a rally that was organized by the FFAW. And it was a very impressive rally by a large number of people. There was 300 plus in a room, people who rely on the fishery to feed their families, community leaders who rely on the fishery for the continued sustainability of their own communities, business representatives who rely on the fishery for their own businesses to be able to continue to operate. And what the topic of discussion, as many of you are aware, was around the northern shrimp allocations by the federal government. And the federal government controls the allocation and harvesting of the fishery in Newfoundland and Labrador. But it was good to see, because I stood there with leaders of the other two parties. Dwight Ball and Lorraine Michael were also there with us, as well as numerous ministers from my government and MHAs as well, and stood shoulder to shoulder with the union in an effort to get the attention of the federal government. Our fishery in Newfoundland and Labrador is of significant importance to us. The shrimp fishery alone has a significant value, and if you think about the inshore fishery bringing their catch to the wharves and hiring staff and employees to bring it to fish plants to be processed by Newfoundlanders and Labradorians who rely on the opportunities to work in their local fish plant so they can stay in their home communities and so that they can feed their families and contribute to their communities, is of significant importance. And the northern shrimp value for Newfoundland and Labrador is about $200 million. But it's part of a $1 billion fishery. Yesterday, Keith Sullivan, who's the president of the FFAW, he termed it, and I've heard him say this before, as the greatest ongoing mega project in Newfoundland and Labrador. The greatest ongoing mega project. I think it's a good way to term it. But we're going to work together and continue to fight for the fishery of Newfoundland and Labrador, because the allocation of the LIFO policy, last in, first out, is just wrong. Those who have invested most recently in their enterprises, in their small business, and all of you in the room know how difficult and challenging it is to grow a business. And when they invest hundreds of thousands of dollars, in some cases $1 million or more, for their own infrastructure, so that they can create and participate in the northern shrimp fishery, just to have their allocation slashed from them, does not make sense. It doesn't make sense in taking that value out of communities and out of fish plants in Newfoundland and Labrador. So we're standing together, and we're going to continue to have discussions with our friends in Ottawa. They're still our friends. Even though we have disagreements, and we've had disagreements over other issues, we still have to try and encourage them to do what's right for Newfoundland and Labrador. And I see it as my job. My job is to represent all of you and to represent Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, and I'm going to continue to do that. Just last week, I had the pleasure of, again, I was in Gander, and I attended the Hospitality Newfoundland and Labrador annual convention. What a room full of upbeat and people who are, if I can use the words, hot to trot on tourism and hospitality in our province, and fully believing in the potential of what we have. it provided me a great opportunity to meet with some of those folks as well and talk about some of the great successes. Really good success stories in small and rural parts of our province who've started small businesses, a B&B, a small cafe, and have driven great success by hiring local people to help them operate their business and bringing revenue and economy into their local communities. And of course, we know when tourists come to visit our local areas and our outports, they also visit St. John's, and they visit Gander, and they visit Corner Brook, and they visit the centralized areas as well. Tourism development has been fueling the growth of our province in many ways, especially in the rural parts, as I mentioned. And it's really a building block of a diversified economy in so many ways. Because when tourism industry flourishes, all the service industries that go with that, and there are numerous, they go with that and provide economic diversification in so many ways. It's interesting to know that when we think about tourism, when I talk about tourism now, I immediately go to the ads that we do. And I think about those beautiful ads. And a month or so ago, I had the privilege of hosting the Maritime Premiers. I'm the Atlantic Premier, they're the Maritime Premiers, but we came together as Atlantic Premiers here in St. John's, right here in this room actually. And when we had a private meeting, one of the first topics they brought up, and I tell you, it was Robert Giz, outgoing Premier, just resigned, just finished up in Prince Edward Island, and he said, "What's your secret on tourism? How are you doing it?" Now, when I grew up as a child, an extensive summertime vacation for us was a trip to Prince Edward Island, because that was the tourism mecca of Canada. That was the ones who got it right. And just imagine, the Premier of Prince Edward Island is asking us how we're doing tourism. There couldn't have been anything prouder that he could have asked me. But what was really interesting is a week or so later, I was in Ottawa at the Council of the Federation, which is the organization of Canadian premiers. And we had a dinner after our first business meetings. We had a dinner that night. First topic brought up to me by another premier was tourism and how are you doing it? Well, I told him I had it locked in a vault in my office and only I had the key, and I wasn't willing to share it. But they talk about what they see as visuals, and they talk about how they see visuals, and they see those beautiful landscapes and those beautiful seascapes. But I think that's what brings people to our province. That's what makes them want to come here to visit us in the first place. But I think what brings them back is our people. Because when they experience our people and they experience that cultural value that we as a province, that's what brings people back to Newfoundland and Labrador. So to put it in dollars and cents perspective, 10 years ago or 5 years ago, we created a 10-year strategy. And we wanted to reach $1.6 billion in spending by 2020. And right now, this year, we'll achieve $1.1 billion. If you think about a time when we are so impacted, and the countrywide is so impacted by the unpredicted drop in oil prices and oil revenues, we still predict this year we're going to reach $1.1 billion in spending, and that's mostly in rural parts of our province. And I think that's tremendous for Newfoundland and Labrador, and again, it's helped to build an industry throughout our province. As well, we've made similar types of investments in other areas as well, and we've, in our efforts to continue to diversify our economy, we've made investments in the high-tech sector, and we've made investments in technology industry, which includes 165 companies today in technology in Newfoundland and Labrador, close to 4,000 people working in that industry. And they're creating revenues of $1.6 billion. Fabulous story for Newfoundland and Labrador, absolute fabulous story. Our investments in government include research and development, and we're enabling some of these high-tech companies to develop expertise and some very good, well-known products. And I want to give you a couple examples. Many of you may be familiar with Verifin. And Verifin creates software that is designed for the prevention and detection of money laundering and money scams and money fraud. The big banks use it. The big banks use the software around the world, developed, continues to be explored, and of course, it continues to evolve right here in Newfoundland and Labrador. A great project. Technip Canada is another one. And Technip is a company here in Newfoundland and Labrador that works in the subsea equipment for the international offshore and gas industry. Virtual Marine Technology is another one, and they're doing work in developing simulators for survival crafts and fast response crafts. needed all around the world in the oil industry. Not only do we have an oil industry in Newfoundland and Labrador, but it exists around the world. And this company is providing technologies that are being utilized worldwide. We're making investments in Memorial University. We're expanding the engineering faculty in the creation of a new offshore research and development center. You have to think about the future potential of the Arctic. It's huge and it's significant. And we have an opportunity to be the gateway to the Arctic, developing the resources and the skills of young Newfoundlanders and Labradorians right here in this province that can continue to build a new industry that's going to last for decades and decades to come. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about my own district or use an example from Topsail District. But if you drive out Pitts Memorial Drive from downtown St. John's, you take a right to go in Trans-Canada Highway, you'll see the Rolls-Royce logo up there. But no one could ever ask to have a... How much better could you have it than have Rolls-Royce operating in your own district? But Rolls-Royce are here developing technologies to address the unique challenges that exist in those Arctic and harsh offshore environments. And we know that as Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, we know a thing or two about those harsh environments. And especially with our offshore, we've experienced it in the past and in the future. So it's a great place to develop those. These and many other tangible investments that we're making to establish Newfoundland and Labrador as a world leader in so many areas. We want to create an opportunity and lead and innovation and with growing enterprises right here at home, as I've pointed out. And we're also partnering with public sector. What a great way, what a great business plan for a government to work with the public sector to create those opportunities. Because it's the public sector that needs to create the business, needs to hire the people, needs to train them, make them qualified, and with us supporting the private sector is the way forward in so many ways. We're doing it in agri-foods, information communications technology. We're doing it in health services, and sectors where opportunities are abound, and we've just begun to scratch the surface. It's real economic diversification, and it's what we need as a province. It's what we need as a people. So there's also, we'd be remiss if we never talked about our resources, and our renewable resources, and our non-renewable resources, because they're significant to us. And people have quite often will ask, one of the most common questions I've asked is, well, what did you do with the money? We've done well. We've done well in oil and gas over the last decade, and what have we done with the money? Well, we've invested $6 billion, billion with a B, $6 billion in schools and infrastructure and roads and healthcare centers. We paid down our provincial debt by $3 billion, by more than $3 billion. We've reduced personal and business taxes by more than $3 billion, and we've created the most attractive tax regime in Atlantic Canada. And we've done that so we can be competitive, so we can be attractive for people who want to live here, and who want to bring a business here, they want to establish a business and grow a business right here in Newfoundland and Labrador. And we haven't borrowed any money since 2004. We're paying for everything out of our current revenues. Now, I can remember the days back when I was a municipal councillor and I was deputy mayor in Conception Bay South. And I remember when I was chair of finance, we'd go off to the Royal Bank and we'd partner with the government of the day to do multi-year capital works funding. So if we wanted to do a $20 million project, we would have to go to the bank and make a case as a town to borrow $20 million. And then the government would pay their share on a regular basis until that debt was paid off. We haven't done that since 2004 because we're paying our way as we go. And we've also increased those multi-year capital works projects from 50-50 cost shared, as they were for many years, to 70-30 for large towns, for 80-20 for medium towns, and for 90-10 for the smallest towns. So we're paying 90%, and those small towns pay 10%. And now they need to go off to their bank and ask the loan at 10% instead of the 50%. And you look at the numbers, and I've been looking at them today, their debt ratios, their debt service ratios in municipalities has dropped significantly since 2006. For the small towns, the medium towns, and the large towns overall, all three areas, all three categories, their debt service ratios are lower today than they were in 2006. So we've got a good foundation. But I tell you, we've only begun. And I can tell you the future is so bright for us. So in the time that I have remaining, I want to talk to you a little bit about the immediate challenges that we're facing, about some of the medium term, and then the longer term view as well. And I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the drop in oil prices just for a few minutes, because they've impacted us here in Newfoundland and Labrador, they've impacted Alberta, and they've impacted Saskatchewan, and they've impacted the entire country of Canada and businesses that operate them and associated to the oil industry. And nobody saw this coming. Nobody saw it. And we face, there's no doubt, we face big challenges as a government. But we've had these challenges before. And the government that I'm part of, we've had these challenges before. As recently as 2008. We challenged this in 2013. And we've stick-handled our way before them. If you look at 2008, when oil and commodities fell, we were one of the fastest provinces in Canada to pull out of that. We've stick-handled our way through it before, and we'll do that again. Ross Wiseman is the Minister of Finance, and he's traveling the province now. He's, as they say, he's in the field and talking to people around the province. And this year we've taken a little bit of a different approach, because we're going out to consultation sessions, and we're asking questions of people who are attending. So very basic, practical, and philosophical type of questions, such as, what are the appropriate programs and services that a government should provide? Because some people believe there are programs and services we should provide that we're not providing. Some people believe that there are programs and services that we are providing that we shouldn't provide. So let's have a discussion about that. And let's do that throughout the province. Is there a larger role for the private sector in the provision of some of those services? I think everyone in the room here would like to have that discussion as well. And how much money do we put away for a rainy day? Now someone said, oh, you've changed the view on rainy day. Well, I think we need to be thinking about those rainy days. But I'll use the example, and this, again, like none of my comments are meant to be, not being critical of any previous governments or parties or anything like that. It's just what we found when we took over and how things have changed in the last decade is what I'm talking about. But it's not meant to be a slight against anybody, I assure you. But, you know, if I'm working for someone here in this room, you think I'm doing a good job, which would be nice, and you give me a bonus someday, and I put that money in my pocket, and I'm driving home, and I'm thinking to myself, you know what I'm going to do? And I'm going to take that tomorrow, I'm going to go down to the bank, and I'm going to open a savings account. And when I get home, I find my roof is opened up, and my roof is leaking. Now I have a choice to make. I've got the money in my pocket. Do I fix my roof, or do I go open that savings account? Well, 10 years ago, we had a lot of leaky roofs in Newfoundland and Labrador. We were daily talking about schools with mold and environments that weren't fit to put children in. We talked about deficits in healthcare, deficits in our healthcare infrastructure. We talked about deficits in our roads and how bad our roads were and our bridges. And we still have demands on roads and bridges and healthcare facilities and schools. Most of the discussion today that we have about schools is trying to meet the demand of the growing population. A problem 10 years ago, any government would have loved to have had. And we have it today, and we have to deal with it. But we have those challenges that we have to deal with and we have to face, and we're going to do that. We want to have a discussion about taxing and borrowing, because you all know that our solutions are limited. We increase our revenue, we decrease our expenditures, we increase our debt and borrow. That's about it. That's about, or we have to do a combination of. So we need to have a discussion about that. What's the right size of the public service? A topic that a lot of people want to talk about. What is the right size of our public service? That probably goes somewhat in hand with some of the other discussions that we're having. And what's the appropriate level of compensation for our doctors and our nurses and our public servants? And what's the right level of compensation for our politicians? That's the discussion that we need to have. And we need to have it with the public, because your input's important, and we need to listen to what the public are telling us. And can we create legislation around budgeting that's going to deal with balanced budgeting? Do we need to do that? Is that the time to do it? And we're about a longer view. My government's about a longer view, and we're taking that longer view. The oil companies do it. Mining companies do it. Because we need to plot out where we're going to be, not only for today and this year, but we need to look at 5 years down the road, and we need to think about beyond that, in 10 years, and 20 years, and 30 years, and 50 years. We have to make that long-term view. We have to keep that vision and that goal in mind, because if we don't dream about the future opportunities, we can't help drive where we go today. So we have to do that. We dreamt about oil and gas many years ago, and look where we are today. We've dreamt about power. Muskrat Falls is a significant game changer. A few years ago, my wife and I visited a place not too far from some place. Let me see if I remember the name of it. Vegas, that's it. And we took a vacation to Vegas, saw some shows and did that stuff. And one day I said to my wife, let's rent a car. So let's rent a car and go for a ride in the desert and explore, experience the desert. I wanted to go to Muskrat. I wanted to go to the Hoover Dam is where I wanted to go. I wanted to have a look at the Hoover Dam. And we did that. We drove out to the Hoover Dam. And we can all, every time, if I mention Hoover Dam, everybody in this room can envision the Hoover Dam. About 725 feet above ground, massive structure, well-known, probably one of the best well-known landmarks in the United States. It creates just over 2,000 megawatts of power, and it's been developing or creating and producing green energy, renewable energy for 80 years. Now you compare that to what we have in the Upper Churchill. The Upper Churchill is 1,025 feet below ground. Massive structure. Produces over 5,400 megawatts of power. Has been doing so reliably for 40 years. Now let's think about Muskrat Falls. 824 megawatts of power. And now what we've done is we've taken an undersea cable from Labrador to the Great Northern Peninsula, through the island into Holyrood. We're going to be able to shut down Holyrood when Muskrat Falls comes online. And we're not only that, we're going to be able to take a line now, we're going to put it undersea in partnership with a mayor, and we're going to send it over to Nova Scotia and onto the markets in the United States. Because I tell you, they want the power. Just a week or so ago, I was in Washington for the National Governors Association. I went down as, I'm the incoming chair of the Canadian Council, or Canadian COF, the Council of Federation of Canadian Premiers. And I went down representing Canadian Premiers. And I jumped at the chance because I knew that governors from northeastern United States were going to be there, and I wanted to talk to them, and I needed to talk to them. When Muskrat Falls comes online, Newfoundland and Labrador will be 98% renewable energy. Our electricity source will be 98% renewable energy. Down in some of the states, the United States, just very recently, they're at 6%. They rely on coal. They rely on natural gas. They rely on nuclear power, and they got to get off it. They need to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions, and they need to get off it. And they need a source of renewable green electricity. Well, we have it. We have it, and I can tell you, they want it. They want it. And if they want, we got 824 megawatts on Muskrat, and we got Gull Island, which has been work done on Gull Island. Gull Island will produce more power than the Hoover Dam itself. Just Gull Island will produce more power. The Churchill Falls River has the ability to produce 4 times the power of the Hoover Dam. It's huge, 4 times what the Hoover Dam can produce, and it can do it for the next 100 years or more. And now with the new technologies that are existing, we can take a cable and drop it under the ocean, and I can run it right in through Boston Harbor if they want it. We can run it right in through there. And if Governor Charlie Baker wants, we'll put it right up to his doorstep for that matter. But they need the power, and I met with several of the governors, and they are truly interested in what we have. They've had a monopoly to deal with Quebec has had a monopoly in this regard before. And they're very excited about an opportunity to create competition. We know that's always healthy. And they're interested in that. I got a few minutes left, and I just wanted to touch on, just on power I should mention as well. This week I went to the mining conference, International Mining Conference in Ontario. I was there Monday. And you talk about long-term view, almost 25,000 people from around the world are attending that conference. Newfoundland and Labrador is very well represented. We've got prospectors there, we've got junior companies there, we've got major players in mining here in Newfoundland and Labrador, and they're there because they're taking that long-term view. Even though there's challenges in commodities today, they're still focused on the future. And they're very interested in Newfoundland and Labrador. I met with Premier Wynne while I was there. And guess what we talked about? We talked about energy. Because Ontario needs energy, and we have it. So the markets are there, and we have the source. And that usually equals an opportunity for us as a province. Any business would love to have that. Any business would love to have a service or a product that someone in the world wants it, and you have a means to get it to them. We've got great things happening in oil with Hibernia and Terra Nova and White Rose. I know my time is running short. Next 5 years, we're going to have new projects come on board with Hibernia South and South White Rose and Hebron. And Statoil's find in the Bay of the Nord is probably it's the most exciting find since Hibernia. It was the largest oil find in the world in 2013, just off here off on our shores. And Statoil is grounded here in Newfoundland and Labrador, and they have long-term plans for us as well. It was there, I mean, they're a Norwegian company, operates out of the North Sea. It's the largest find that Statoil ever had outside of the North Sea. And we've got players interested in our oil and gas business now that have never been here before. We've done 2D seismic work off the coast of Labrador, and I tell you the potential is significant. They believe now, based on the information we have now, if you look at the geography of our offshore oil reserves, today, we have licensed 5% of that whole geographic area. Think about it. Think about what's happened in Newfoundland and Labrador in the last decade because of oil. And think 95% of it is yet to be touched. We've only touched 5% of it so far. But we still have short-term challenges that we have to face. And when we bring out my budget very soon, bring the budget forward very, very soon, we will deal with the short term. We're going to talk more about the medium term and more about the long term, because we have to keep that long-term view. In the next 5 years, we're going to return to surplus will be our plan. We're going to tap into those resources that are available to us. We're going to continue to make investments in business and our local economy. We have to move forward. We have to continue to do this work for Newfoundland and Labrador. We have to create those revenue streams. We have to create opportunity and partnership with business. We have to continue to invest where strategically it makes sense to do that, where people can grow and prosper as a province, and that drives us and makes us everything we could be. We have to continue to do it, and I can tell you I'm here to do that. I plan to be here for a long time, and I'm working towards that. We have a lot of work to do, and we're working very hard at it. I can tell you, everybody, I love Newfoundland and Labrador. I love the people of Newfoundland and Labrador. And Newfoundland and Labrador is a wonderful place, and in partnership with all of you, Newfoundland's future is rock solid. Thank you very much.